Yeah, well, I think there's a variety of things. A couple of them are the way in which the incentives have been structured makes it really challenging to, like, on the surface, show that it is beneficial. A lot of the benefits are indirect, and so they're focused on things like the benefits to the soil or long-term impacts to the climate, a lot of carbon sequestration work. A lot of those aren't embodied in the upfront incentives, and so from the beginnings, it's hard to distinguish, is there enough upfront economics to make it work? It has grown in the last few years where there's been more of an acceptance. In certain markets where there are upfront incentives, they require complex and expensive studies to prove that you actually are providing agrivoltaic solutions. So it's been hard to really see the adoption. Most of that incentives are in the East, so Massachusetts, New York, we're seeing a lot more where there's like confined farmland. In places like California, where we have lots of expansive farmland, there's plenty of land, especially now with the Groundwater Management Act, to move onto fallowed land, and not necessarily just co-locate solar. It's probably a substantial one. A lot of it's around education. The agriculture community, although like we think of it as one cohesive community, tends to be very bifurcated with very different like beliefs and ideas. So I think there's a role for the nonprofit and public agencies to really talk about the benefits of co-located renewables. But in addition to that, like the depth of like how do agriculture use energy in the most fundamental sense. We're seeing rising energy costs across California. I think we'll continue to see that. So both public and policy and well as nonprofits really could support the education of energy and maybe help with some of the politicized views around renewables. Yeah, and in terms of like basic climate change, we're still headed for very difficult futures. And so some of the words we've already heard at this conference today, like we're continuing to see increasing fossil fuel consumption around the world. I think what we're going to see where the most benefits are is in heavy agricultural land where we're doing lots of irrigation and we need large pumps, and how do we charge those pumps with more electrified answers. I also think we'll see agriculture participate more as a participant in the energy markets and less as just a consumer. For co-located solar on top of farmland, I think it will be in countries where there is a dense population. So Europe will probably continue to lead in this way. But we are seeing more single kind of subsistence farming across like Southeast Asia and some Africa that will need more of these shaded structures really to kind of help save the underlying agriculture. Well, I think it takes a couple of different forms. In the U.S., we're going to continue to see the investment tax credit is the primary subsidy for these projects. We'd like to see more of a push of that on the state level. And now with the changing federal government, there's a lot of uncertainty in what that means for federal incentives. So one is to be very active in probably state politics on supporting these upfront incentives or incentives in any form. And then a lot of it is really leaning into how these tax credits are structured so that we're able to get the full value back to the consumer. And ultimately, that the agrivoltaics is a solution for agriculture. It's not just a co-located extra revenue stream. There's going to be a lot of symbiotic benefits for both growing food and saving the planet.